Welcome to Midnight Scriptures, where the candles burn low and the dead never truly rest. Tonight, we travel back to 1727, to a village that was erased from every map because something there refused to die. This is the story of the harvest of Raven's Hollow. And if you listen closely, you might still hear the cries from beneath the soil. Raven's Hollow lay hidden at the edge of the English moors, a village forgotten by time, where mist crawled like breath and the church bell had not rung in 40 years. The people were quiet folk, farmers, millers, and wives with haunted eyes. They never spoke after dusk. They nailed their windows shut and salted their doorsteps. It began one autumn evening, when the harvest moon turned red. The air smelled of iron and decay. The ravens circled the fields, screeching louder than the church choir ever did. And from the well, the old one behind the blacksmith's cottage, came the sound of weeping. At first, they thought it was the wind, until the crying started saying names. Thomas Marin, the blacksmith, was the first to hear it call his. His hammer fell from his hand as he stumbled toward the sound, heart pounding. When he peered into the darkness of the well, something looked back. Eyes, not human, not animal, wet and glassy like polished bone. And beneath the surface, hands pressed against the stone, pale as candle wax. He told no one what he saw. By dawn, his wife found him hanging in the forge, his mouth filled with ash, and his eyes replaced with black feathers. That night, the church bell rang once, though the bell rope had been cut decades ago. Father Hawthorne, the old priest, declared it a curse, the price of sin and forgotten prayers. He gathered the villagers, torchlight trembling on their faces, and led them to the chapel. They prayed until their lips bled, but something listened in the dark, something that remembered their voices from long ago. The next morning, the crops turned black. Every stalk of corn shriveled to dust. The cattle broke their own necks trying to flee the pastures. And near the well, the earth had cracked open, a long, narrow wound in the ground that breathed. By the third night, Raven's Hollow was no longer quiet. The crying from the well became laughter, high, shrill, and endless. Children vanished from their beds. The priest found small teeth in his pockets. And in the church, written across the altar in blood, were the words, "The harvest is owed." They remembered the legend then, from their grandparents' time, when famine had struck the village 50 years earlier. Desperate, the people had turned to the woods, to the figure they called the Raven Keeper. They said he was not man nor beast, but something in between, draped in feathers, crowned with bone, speaking with the voice of the storm. He offered them food, endless harvests, and safety from plague. In return, he asked for one soul each generation, buried alive beneath the well at harvest moon. But the last offering never came. The people had broken the pact, and now he'd come to collect. The villagers fled to the chapel, clutching rosaries and scythes. The priest sprinkled holy water that hissed like acid when it touched the ground. But from the mist, figures began to emerge, the long dead, crawling from the fields, faces half decayed, eyes black as ravens. They carried the tools they had died with, pitchforks, spades, hammers, and they sang, low, wordless, and wrong, the sound of hunger given voice. Father Hawthorne shouted scripture until his throat split, but his words turned to crow's midair, feathers spilling from his mouth. They tore through the windows, circling the rafters until the church was nothing but black wings and screams. In the chaos, one girl, Elspeth, the baker's daughter, ran for the forest. Her lantern flickered weakly, the path vanishing beneath fog. She could hear something following, soft footsteps and the rattle of chains. When she stumbled into the clearing, the light revealed the old scarecrow. But it wasn't straw anymore. It was made of bodies, stitched together with vines, faces sewn where eyes should be, fingers clawing at the air. And perched on its shoulders, like a crown, sat the Raven Keeper himself, his face hidden behind a mask of bone, feathers falling like ash from his robes. He spoke her name. "Your blood carries the debt. Your father promised me your soul before you were born." Elspeth dropped to her knees. "Please. We forgot the pact. We didn't mean." "Forgotten," the creature hissed, "is a mortal excuse." He raised his hand, and the earth around her began to move. From the soil, hands emerged, hundreds of them, clutching at her arms, her legs, her hair. They dragged her down as the ground split open, swallowing her screams. When the sun rose, Raven's Hollow was gone. Only the bell tower remained, crooked and blackened, its bell ringing faintly in the wind. Travelers who passed through the moors said they sometimes saw lanterns in the fog, moving like people who'd lost their way. And if you listened closely, you could still hear the weeping from beneath the soil. Each year, on the night of the harvest moon, the crows return to circle the field. And as the wind howls across the hollow, the bell rings 13 times, though there are no ropes, no tower, and no one left alive to hear it. They say that if you ever find the well of Raven's Hollow, don't look inside, because something down there remembers the light and it's still hungry. You've been listening to Midnight Scriptures. If the whispers follow you tonight, don't listen too closely. They always want someone new.